Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim. Today, I want to talk about ageism in the game industry. And that's why I'm wearing this shirt, which you may have noticed is a little tight. This is the very first shirt I ever received. You can see it's from Pegasus Software. I got this shirt 40 years ago. I am the same height, 6'1", as I was when I received this shirt when I was, I think, 18. I am not the same weight. I was 135 pounds then. I am not 135 pounds now, but you can see it's a little tight, but I'm going to wear it. Also, it came out of the box in the garage, so it's a little strange smelling. To talk about ageism, which is something, if you had asked me even more than 10 years ago, I would have said, never seen it, don't know what you're talking about. But I see it happening more and more frequently, and it's becoming more and more overt. What literally made me think of talking about this was within the last 2 weeks on a game development forum. I like to sometimes go and hang out anonymously at game development forums. I saw someone say they dismissed some feature that someone had suggested. And the reason for it was they said, that's why I don't like making games with old people. I was like, but what don't you like about the feature? You know I'm a stickler for give constructive criticism. I don't think there's anything about the feature they didn't like other than it was something that's been used in games for 20 years. And I've said how much I like working at Obsidian, but there was one day there where someone called me a boomer. And first of all, I am not a boomer. I'm Gen X. Although, as Eliza Schlesinger would say, I'm an elder Gen X, because she's an elder millennial. What's funny about that is the person who said that would flip their lid if I had called them a Zoomer. But for some reason, it was okay to call me a boomer. What was strange was I was sitting next to someone who was a boomer. And I was like, first of all, that doesn't apply to me. It does apply to him. So I don't know if you know where your insults are landing, but the weird thing, too, is it was just because, again, that person didn't like a feature that I was suggesting because it's been used. It was old school or something. I forget why they didn't like it. But they didn't have a reason for not liking it. So what I found is when people bring up these ageist arguments, it's almost always the argument of last resort. They can't come up with a reason. There's nothing they can say about it that makes their idea better. So they're basically just, it's one of those, if you can't attack the idea, attack the person. I'm seeing this more and more in startups and indies, especially younger folks in those, when I go to these boards, and it worries me because it's like, it's like in my career when I saw someone dismiss an idea because of someone's race or gender or background or sexual identity. No one would ever say, this is why I don't like working with women. This is why I don't like working with gay people. Or this is why I don't like working with black people. But the person who said, I don't like working with old people, thought it was totally fine to say that. Which in my mind is just as bad as all those other ones. But it's just strange. It's for some reason this is okay to say. And I used to think for the last decade or so that I was seeing this more and more often because I'm getting older and it was my bias. But now I'm beginning to think that no, this is like the last remaining publicly acceptable discrimination. All the other discriminations are literally being made illegal. So people are like, well, I'll just say I don't like your idea because you're old. It's strange. And I will tell you that now that I've been working for the last 3 years as a consultant and not an employee, the opposite has happened. And it's really refreshing. And I'll explain that. People, when you're a design consultant, people seek you out for your experience. They're literally asking you, hey, we have this problem, or we have this issue, or we have a feature we're trying to design, and we can't decide which one to use. You've done a feature like this in many past games. What do you suggest? And frequently my answer isn't do X. It's, well, I had these 3 solutions. Each one has pros and cons. I can explain them to you, but then you're going to have to decide for your game, what are the pros that you want and what cons can you live with? Because there's no solution that doesn't come with a problem. So I like when we talk like that because it shows me that people are open to ideas from all kinds of backgrounds. It's what I talked about why I liked working with a more diverse group of people. It's when I was doing level design and there was a level designer who liked to hike. And so some of her ideas were really cool for level design because she thought of things like elevation change and view from particular points, or that just the fact that unchanging terrain for more than a short period of time, whether it's, grassy or elevation deltas, is boring. It's more exciting when you have deltas. And unlike regular hiking, or when I did my Disneyland talk and I said, well, they encourage you to go a certain way by slope, that doesn't necessarily work in a game. You're not discouraged to go a slightly up slope because you don't really notice it as a gamer. So they have to be more extreme. It's like here's a cliff or here's a mountain, and you're going to have to actually think about how to jump or parkour up that mountain, which some people view as a challenge, but that's fine. But anyway, I like that because working with people with a lot of different backgrounds lets you come up with new solutions. Or when you suggest solutions, people will think of additional pros and cons that you didn't think of. I love that. I do remember one case at Interplay where we hired someone and someone said to me, oh, that's an old school guy. And he didn't necessarily mean he was old. He meant his background was not in computer games. It was in tabletop games. And I thought that was a really bad way to look at it because I knew there was a lot of transfer between the two. And I would love to have heard more about what his ideas were on how to solve some problems that come up. When I was looking for a job in between Carbine and Obsidian, that's when I first started seeing ageism in all kinds of like masked ways. I mean, people were being very polite, but during several of the job interviews I did, things would come up like somebody would say, oh, you have way more experience than what we're looking for. And I was looking for a senior role. Now, keep in mind, once you hit senior, unless you want to manage, that's what you're going to be in for the rest of your career. If you don't want to be a lead or a principal, you're going to be a senior. So I didn't quite understand that comment. And then somebody later on, a friend of mine said, oh, he was telling you were old. At one table, I went to some interview and like 8 people came to lunch with us. And at that table, one person said, wow, you're as old as my dad. And someone else said, wow, your career is older than me. And I laughed at the time and I thought, oh, well, that's funny. But then I was wondering if they're going, I don't want to work with someone the age of my dad. So saw the ageism stuff creep in. I'm seeing it, but it was very subtle back then. Like 10 years ago, it was very subtle. And sometimes I wondered if it was there, if I was just looking for it. But now, when I saw somebody write on a game dev board, that's why I don't like working with old people in development. I was like, whoa, there it is, right there. And I know when I did my talk, my video about being a gay game developer, and people were like, oh, that stuff doesn't happen anymore. I saw an Outer Worlds review. And during the review, the reviewer called something, and it wasn't Outer Worlds, it was a book he had read. He said, it's gay. And no, he didn't mean anything other than that was a stupid book. I was like, wow, I even checked the date. I'm like, we're in the third decade of the 21st century, and people are still doing that. So I can't say now that I'm an older boomer. Older Gen X. There, I just did it. I'm an older Gen X. A lot of stuff that I thought would happen when you get older, it's not happening. Yes, the health deterioration is happening, but it's much more gradual. It's not like you wake up one day and go, ow, everything hurts. It's you go on a hike one day and the next day you're sore and you think, okay, I'll be sore today. And then that soreness lasts about a week. You're expecting it to be gone after a day or two, and it stays with you. That kind of stuff is happening. But all the other things I heard, like when you get older, you want to appreciate new music or new TV shows. That's not happening. I don't know if it's because of streaming music, but I'll tell I can't say its name or it'll activate. I can't tell my assistant to start playing a song, and then start without it playing other songs after that. And I find myself going, what song is this? What song is this? And that's how I found Witch House music I mean, who knew that at my age I'm into Witch House? Or I found that musician I mentioned in a previous video called Lorne, Lorn. If that guy makes a bad track, I haven't heard it. And I've listened to dozens more of his music. It's fantastic. And the thing about, people have older values. I've run into a lot of older liberals and a whole lot of younger conservatives. So that's not matching up either. Again, it's just a stereotype. And for some reason, though, it's okay to have this. And the only thing I can think of is everyone, liberal, conservative, young, old, everybody wants an other that they can assign all their vitriol to. And I think younger people feel like, well, I'm open minded, so, I'm never going to make fun of someone for their gender or their orientation or their race or anything. But being old, apparently that's still okay. So I'm wondering if that's going to be in 10 or 20 years, people are going to be looking at the 40 or 50 somethings going, wow, you guys used to be really bigoted. Who knows? Anyway, I've got to get this shirt off because I cannot breathe. So that's my rant on ageism in the game industry.